Hello, beautiful souls. Welcome to Astrano's podcast. We are going to be talking about the inner child today. So we're going to take it down a notch and it's going to be beautiful. Yeah. If you don't know much about the inner child, you will by the end of today's podcast. You'll also know how to talk to, how to work with, how to heal your inner child so that you can be free and you can have lots of fun in your life. So yeah, I'm Neff, I'm Melissa, both are me, and I'm going to be your host for today.
I'm Grace.
My name is King.
Hi everyone, I'm Mella.
I'm Rebecca.
Awesome. So yeah, we're going to start with what is the inner child, okay? And I love inner child healing work because it is very grounded. Everybody can kind of, start to dip their toes in this and really understand inner child healing work. And it was truly the first thing that really broke me through into healing my traumas, healing my the trauma looping that was happening in my life. Healing just, the amount of density and then obviously childhood traumas, right? They affect us until we actually do the work to heal them. And those can be subconscious behaviors that we have and might not be conscious of all of that stuff. Because, it's fun to study the mom and the dad, right? And to really go into where that's reflecting within you. But yeah, it's a great place to start, guys, because it's easy and it's also we can start bringing in the unconditional love because really the inner child healing work is all about unconditionally loving yourself, loving every part of you, everything that's happened in your life. And it's a beautiful, beautiful thing to bring in that love every day, start working with the inner child. And then the whole universe to healing is going to open up just from doing the unconditional love and inner child healing work because it's so powerful. It's so powerful for your inner child to finally feel seen and loved by you. To start that journey. So I want to just start off with for a question for all of you guys is what is the inner child to you within your own life and how have you experienced the inner child?
I can start. Well, I think it's nice too that they're starting to do actual studies on how impressionable children are, from the moment you're born up until 3, you're very, very incredibly impressionable. And so not to say that, your parents should be perfect and all this stuff, the parents and everybody has trauma, but it's the child. And so when you are wounded as a child, it shows up in anxiety and depression, panic. And for me, the inner child, just kind of nurturing it's been such a process because you don't recognize that this anxiety, because it doesn't come up as oh, of course, it's that wound from 20 years ago. Obviously, you're not going to remember the specific time. So it is kind of that investigative working of, okay, this piece that I'm being triggered by, if somebody's, saying something to me and I don't feel seen or heard, okay, where did that start? So it's kind of this beautiful process of learning how to, it's kind of sad, but learning how to be your own parent and be your own love, just loving yourself incredibly, and showing up for yourself all the time because, if you weren't when you were a child, you can kind of heal this with yourself. And that is what we truly want to end up doing, is just being able to support ourselves entirely. And then, of course, too, have our community that we can rely on. So it's a process for me of just understanding that it doesn't have to be perfect all the time. And it is a journey throughout this whole lifetime of just seeing the self, seeing the child, and just being I love you. I'm so sorry that, this happened to you and I want to see you. And it is just that process of forgiveness over and over again.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. What was the sorry? So, what is my interpretation of inner child?
Yeah, so we'll start with yes, like what is your interpretation of the inner child? What is the inner child? So people can understand, first of all, what is the inner child? What does that mean?
So to me, the inner child means exactly it. The inner child, the kid within me. So all of us human beings, we were all a child, but as a human being, we're blessed to grow up, to grow old, and then as we grow older, we develop a new mindset. But I think the biggest part about the healing the inner child is reconnecting to the youth, to that child, to that 3 4 5 year old you that was pure, that was innocent. And sometimes in life, what happens is, life takes that innocence from you and you're traumatized, you're hurt. And when this thing happens and you don't know how to cope with it, you don't know how, you're not equipped, or your take care, or your parents or your guardians don't know how to give you to cope with you, or what's the term I'm looking for here, the tools to help you soothe the pain or to process, the support to process the emotion. You kind of build all these things, the coping mechanism that eventually becomes your habit, and then it becomes who you are. So like what Grace was saying, if you were a child and you were hurt, and then all of a sudden you built this story that, oh, this, my parent did this, so I am this, and then you grow up holding on to these beliefs because that is what you grew up and you felt safe with. Because as a child, we, as a human being, we're a creator of meaning. We create meanings like instantly, and as a child, that's when it's the most powerful. And so inner child is, for me, is that true, like, it's, for me, the way I see it is our body hosts many different versions of us: the inner child, the inner teenager, the present now, and the wise sage, and all these things inside of us. And inner child is just one aspect of that being, and I think it's one of the most important part that we need to heal and work on. Because if the inner child inside of us is crying, it's not satisfied, it's not happy, then it's gonna show up in the present moment. It's gonna give you, it's like this energy that's like needs to be released. And I think that it's important for us to really look back onto that. And I think one of the biggest way to tap into that is really just remember your very earliest memory as a child. What's the earliest that you could remember? Was it when you were 3 or 4 or 5? What is it? And yeah, that's a great story.
That's a good one.
For me, I think what resonates the most for me, it's interesting that we use the term inner child instead of saying like inner being. And I think that the reason that we do this is like Grace, touching on what Grace was saying, just showing, I think the main piece to this whole puzzle, like awakening, is just actually finding a way to show this love to everyone that you know, everyone around you, a stranger. So the inner child comes into the equation. Like, you would never be mean to a little kid. So what we do is we show ourselves the love that you would show to a child. You would never be mean to them. So that's really the biggest practice when you're working with your inner child, is just showing yourself that love that maybe you didn't get in those moments where this trauma was created, right? So yeah, love is like, it's always the answer. Isn't it? Yeah.
Yeah. For me, inner child, it's very interesting. You look at the person that you are today, and it's made up of all of these experiences that you've had up over your entire life. So inner child to me is like the OG, the original, the original trauma holder,
Original carbon copy.
yeah, where you were, starting to be created, where you started to get your own mindset about how the world works. And we always forget about this place that we came from. And it's so important to remember your childhood, because there's been so many conversations that I've had with people where they're like, oh, like, I don't remember much about my childhood. And the reason that you don't is because it's usually a trauma or something that your mind is like, nope, like,
Blocks.
yeah, blocked it, don't want to remember that. And you forget about these things. And like you were saying, King, when these things are brought up and they're not dealt with, it can really turn into some crazy stuff. But learning to love and recognizing where that trauma came from, what is the trauma that I'm dealing with, and then showing that pure love. It's kind of cool because you don't think that you would be able to speak with your inner child or connect with your inner child, but you actually can, which I think is so interesting.
They're just reconnecting you with this memory that you thought that you lost. So it's kind of cool. You can, like Grace was saying, like everyone probably was saying, when you are able to come into this place where you're fully you are just in the moment with yourself, you can just talk, like imagine that. You can talk to yourself and say, like, why, what is this tension that I'm holding? Why am I feeling this way? And you get this answer. And isn't that the craziest thing in life, that you don't have to look, you don't have to ask anyone, oh, Google, like, why am I feeling this way? No, you can go back to the source and be like, what the hell is going on with this? Like, why does it bother me so much? And it's wild because you can just say, okay, body, I love you so much. Can we let this go now? Is this beneficial for me? Is this something that's making me happy in my life? And if it's not, bye. Gotta get rid of it.
Heck yeah.
I think the crazy thing is actually like that we think that that's crazy, you know, like how cool and crazy it is, like to be able to talk to the body and like just go internally, like Melania's saying, and get the answers from ourselves. Because it's like, yeah, it should be natural. I think, like, I'm a believer that like energy work and all of this stuff should just be like something that we're in the natural flow of and part of our, you know, just environment and the way that we're taught since young. Because yeah, like the inner child for me, like you come into this body, like we've talked about in past podcasts, as a soul, right? And it's very dense here. Okay, it's very dark, very dense. It's a lot of pressure. So I think like even if you have the perfect parents on this planet, you're still experiencing the collective environment, which is, you know, toxins, which is poisons in the air, poisons in the food, and the toxicity of some, you know, humans that are struggling around us as well, right? Just the environments. So we're all dealing, like there's a lot of people who, you know, like they're not aware that they might be carrying trauma. Like we all have trauma on this planet. Okay. We all have trauma just from being here. So there's inner child healing work to do for every single person. And I'm a strong believer in that. That's my opinion. However, that's, you know, that's what I believe. And that's what I have come to know from the healing process and dealing with the body and the amount of trauma that's in our bodies from just our environment. And so, yeah, the inner child's healing, it's a great place to start because like they were saying, it is the beginning days, right? Like that's when you're in your organic, you know, your soul's still really like blaring out into the world. You're still in that organic flow a lot more than when you've been dimmed out and you're older. So when we go back and we do the inner child healing and talk to those children and get them to release, we can have a lot of shift, a lot of change, because that's your soul. That's the power, you know, like a lot of your power resides in your early childhood. So if we can heal that up first, your power and your ability to retap into the organic reality and the organic reality within you is like right there, baby. Like we can really get moving then, right? So I love the inner child healing work. And yeah, like I just wanted to also touch on for you guys, like why trauma gets stuck in the body so we can understand that. And for me, in my experience, what I've learned with trauma, especially for children, right? Because they're learning, they're absorbing, they're not super mature yet to know how to deal with emotion. So they're just going off of how everyone else around them is dealing with emotion or what's naturally coming up and how to deal with it, or they just don't know how to deal with it. And that's how a wound is created. So let's say like King goes through a really traumatic experience, okay? And he has not yet learned how to deal with trauma. And, you know, maybe like his mom and his dad are like yelling at each other or something. And as a kid, right, King is really feeling their emotion because you're like absorbing emotion like crazy at that age because you don't have as much language and all of these other things developed. So emotion is a big thing, right? And so if he doesn't know how to deal with the emotion properly, like staying in love, right? If he gets sucked into that emotion, and then he's not able to work through it, it can get stuck and frozen in the body if it doesn't complete the trauma cycle. So that means like, for example, if a wound is like, if you freeze in the moment, if you contract, okay, if you like, you know, start to have panic attacks, if you start to have anxiety and you're not able to like let the emotion fully flow out of the body, and hold space for it, then it's going to get trapped. And I think that's why we have a lot of childhood wounds because like, obviously we don't know how to like hold our soul space of love yet. So a lot of stuff is getting lodged in there because it's like, whoa, what? My parents are yelling, oh my God, contracting, holding it,
it's
you know?
stuck in there, you know?
Yeah. So, and you can see this with people like, so with the inner child healing work, when we go in to talk to the child, we are trying to get the child to let us know what's going on, like Melania told us. And it's as simple as like going into a part of your body where you might feel pain, okay? And you can just go in and say hello. Like, hi, I see you. I see that you're suffering. I see that you're hurting. Because that's the first step in the inner child healing is they just want to be witnessed. Like we have been ignoring them forever. And so a lot of these ones will actually be really pissed off that you've not been checking in and that you've been so absent. So yeah, that's the first step is to just bring your awareness and say like, hey, I'm here with you and I can see that you're in pain. And then you can start asking questions. Like what happened to you? You know, like why are you feeling this way? And this is the investigation process, like Grace was saying, is like we start to investigate like why that pain is even there. And you guys will be surprised, just like Melania was, the amount of like just quick responses you're probably going to get from your body. That, you know, those answers are right there for you. Okay. And so the second part of this, and by the way, we're going to do a big session tomorrow. It's coming out tomorrow afternoon at 12 p.m. MST on like, I'm going to take you guys through this. So I'm just lightly touching on the process here. And then for those who are interested to learn the whole process and actually go through it in real time, we're going to do that tomorrow. So please join for that. But yeah, the next step is you want to actually see if the inner child is ready to let that emotion go. Because like we were just saying, it's stuck in the body. That emotion, that frequency, that energy is still within your body. So we need to get it released. So you ask the inner child eventually when it's ready, like, can we release this so it can finish that trauma response cycle? Okay. It needs to release the energy, let it out of the body, not contract, but, you know, open up. And you can actually just hold space for it and you're coming as the parent, right? So this is the child and you can hold space for it and you can say like, okay, if you're ready to let this go, let's let it go, baby. And you just let it scream, let it cry. If you need to move your body, okay? And wait. Like sometimes this can take up to 10 minutes for your inner child to fully release. Okay. And then the third part of it is what we like to do with our inner child healing is once it's gone through that full trauma response and you were able to release the frequency out of the body, now it's ready to be moved to your sanctuary, we call it. And we like to just build a place in your mind, okay? Like, you know, off in space somewhere, a safe space that you design for all your inner children to go after they have been released from bondage within the body, okay? But it's very important to make sure they go through the trauma response release first, okay? You can't just like start ripping these parts out of your body to your sanctuary. It's better to release, go through the full response. And then you can actually move them once they're done releasing to your beautiful safe space that you've created. And they will be so, so happy, okay? And yeah, it's as simple as that. We're going to go more in depth tomorrow on that process, like I said, with you guys. But like this planet has had a huge separation from innocence. It's probably like one of our biggest wounds as a collective is being ripped away from innocence. So we need to restore that within our inner children, and then we can have fun again, and then we can actually live life and be in the beautiful organic flow of life, just enjoying everything, you know, whether that's the smell of the flowers, whether that's, you know, dancing around with our friends, all of that stuff. We've become really, really sick from being separated from play and fun and that organic, just like love that the child has for life. So that's a big part of this process of what you'll get back if you do the inner child healing. And that's what I've experienced myself. But yeah, I wanted to ask you guys, so what is your guys' favorite practices? I know I just kind of outlined our main one, but is there any other practices that you guys like, or any moments that you want to share that you've had with your inner children to just, yeah, share with the community here?
There you go, Grace.
Let me go first? Yeah, I think one thing that Alyssa touched on is innocence. That's such a big one for me that I like to focus on, is this innocence, because we were looking at this chart of like what are the heaviest, dark, like densest emotions, and they are like obviously fear, but also guilt and shame. And innocence is the exact opposite of that. And that's what we come into this world like feeling, like we're innocent, we're pure. And then they kind of just push this society, this way of living. We're kind of pushed onto this idea that we've done something wrong, or that we are to blame, or that we're not doing something right. And that's why we feel like this, like we've done this to ourselves. And when we can recognize that we come into this world just with the biggest hearts and just wanting to love everything around us, and then we're kind of just, all of these rocks are kind of just put on top of our hearts, and it just gets heavier and heavier, and we're just, you kind of fall into this numbness, this sadness, this I'm trying but I'm so tired, you know? It can be really devastating to the child, to the innocence. So recognizing that that you're a good person and that you are pure and innocent, and really practicing this, even just telling yourself like, I'm innocent, I didn't do anything wrong. I think that's a good practice to hold. And then of course the practice of investigating, you know, if you are feeling or triggered in every moment, anytime you're triggered, instead of, you know, deciding that this is a big deal or a big trauma that we're just going to loop and loop and loop, you know, coming inside and, okay, where did this start? Like the process that Alyssa touched on, it's very empowering to source it back and then see that your external life shift. Once you've started healing these wounds, you'll notice that you're less reactive when people are doing something that used to really bother you. Once you've nourished and seen the inner child and shown it, hey, you know, I'm here for you, we're here together, you can rewrite your story. So yeah, you are in power.
That's I'm gonna build on that, like the story that you, like, you know, because that's the thing with, for me, the inner child healing that I like to do is I go into the past and try to see like, okay, what happened in the past and what, because memory is the key to a key that will help you heal those traumas. So for example, guys, for me, I like to look at the past and then, you know, see some things that I might have created a story on what it was, and then what I like to do is I like to show up as, you know, I will go into this meditation and then I'll tap into that memory and then go back into that place and time, and then just see, just be there as myself now, and then see myself for when I was maybe 4 or 5. And then, once that trauma happens, kind of like, I see myself crying and, whatever. And then I'll just kind of like talk to him like, hey man, like, what happened? How you doing? And then, there's going to be a conversation that's going to happen. And then eventually what I like to do is, try to kind of just hear him out and then tell him, so what happened? So, that kid, that little version of me created a story of what happened. But then what I do is, hey, this is what happened. This is it just happened, but you created this story, and now you're building on this story. You are making the story the foundation of your life, and that's not healthy. Like, it's just an experience, and it's just something that it went through. And I also tell him that, the people around you were also very damaged, and they weren't aware. They didn't have the tools to process all these things, and from that creates compassion for myself and for other people. And another thing as well is really just tapping into my inner child. Like, and sometimes just random days, I'll just kind of like hold my heart, and I'm just walking and just tap, hold my heart, and I'm like, inner child, how you doing today? And sometimes it just be like, I'm good. How you doing? But sometimes it's like, I'm just feeling a little bit sad because, and then I'll remember a memory for some reason. I'll remember a memory of, the traumatizing memory, and then, okay, I'll come back home, I'll work on it. And the most amazing part about this is, once you heal a memory, it opens up another memory that, your mind might have been blocking you for, maybe because you're not ready to see it yet, or for whatever reason. But for me, the healing is really just trying to go back to that earliest that you can, and then really just it's kind of like going like a ladder, like, or a stairs, like, okay, memory until you get to the purest form that you are. And then once you tap into that, just embody it, live it out, because a kid has no fear, guys. A kid has no fear, and it's very loving. But it just, as it grows up, it learns to, like, fear, and it's us adults that teaches the kid to be fearful and to hate, and that's terrible. So yeah, my biggest goal is to really just tap into that purest form that I can be, so I can express it out to be an inspiration. And it's a work in progress, but it's a good work. So yeah.
Beautiful.
I definitely agree with all of those things. Just checking in. It's really, it's pretty simple as that. Just talk to yourself. How are you doing today? Just like everyone's been saying. It's really, it's pretty mind-blowing how easy the whole situation is. And it's just like, here you go, have some pills for that little problem that you have, instead of working towards actually healing. So I think that's important to our group, to actually take the time to come into ourselves and support each other too, just to be the best that we can be, just to reach that beautiful DNA template, our original. So yeah, love that.
Yeah, I feel like this is me personally, but in order to fully move on and move through and heal, you have to start with the inner child, because that is like a huge part of who you are. And going back to what you were saying, Grace, of, it's that cycle. You're just going to keep going around in that cycle over and over and over again until you deal with the root of the problem, which is figuring out, okay, why am I acting this way? What happened to me? Checking with the inner child and being like, okay, like, are you okay? What's going on? Why am I acting like this? And things started to change for me personally after we had that inner child meditation healing, and we actually got to talk to our inner child, and I could see a little girl crying, and I was like, this is like as we're in meditation, I'm like, whoa, that's weird. Like, I didn't know we could actually do this. And talking for the first time to my inner child and being like, oh, are you okay? And just be able to hug that child and, you know, hug yourself and like see that innocence of like just pure love and questioning and wondering. It's a magical thing.
Imagine if we approached every single person we knew as if they were just like a little child. The kind of love that you would be able to show that person.
Mm-hmm.
So, I don't know. It's really cool to do that. To be vulnerable with yourself as well, because it's not easy to rip those wounds open. Because the reason why they're covered up so much is because you were so young and your body was like, no, we can't deal with this. We'll just put this away for later. We can deal with this later. And if we are willing and able at this point in time, like, let's rip them open, baby. Let's deal with this. Let's show ourselves that love that we all deserve.
To bring it back to the start of what it really was, which is that purity, that love, that innocence, because we're brainwashed and we are taken away from that innocence. We are literally trained to become fearful, trained to, you know, forget everything that you ever know. And, you know,
interesting.
Yeah.
Next time on Astrano's official podcast.
Do you guys know what's interesting about like wounds, right? With physical wounds, if you have a wound and you just cover it with Band-Aid without letting it air out, it's gonna have maggots in it, you know? It's gross. And I feel like it's the same with like emotional wounds, you know? You have to express it. You have to be able to witness it. Even if it's not yourself, a friend or a therapist. You can share it to a therapist, friend, and even yourself. Like, you can allow yourself to see that wound and see it for what it is, and then you may cry, you may shout, you may scream, but this allows it to release that energy, right? And so these are powerful.
Yeah. And I love how you say, like, you know, kids aren't fearful at all.
Yeah.
Because when we're talking on the inner child wounding, the two things I find is if it slips out of love, like if fear is created, that's like a wound is starting. You know what I mean? Like if you're ever in fear, anxiety, and all that stuff, it all roots back to fear or love. If you ever slip out of love, then a wound is like bound to start being created in that space. As well as, like, we're talking the reparenting, right? Like, now we're mature. Okay, now we can go back and like reparent those wounds, right? The other thing is, like, if that I found with my wounds is if they're not in truth, like you were saying, right? They've made up stories that are not true. Okay. So those are kind of like the two grounds of like where wounds are created from, is if you slip out of love or if you slip out of truth, the real truth of reality, right? Like the real reality, and you're in illusion, or delusion, right? That's where, because I've had some inner children when I'm working with my inner child, like some of them will be like really, really hurt, but they'll also have like an illusionary belief of like, no, I can't forgive them, because if I forgive them, then I'm saying that it's okay what they did, right? And obviously at this point, I know like that's not how life works. I can forgive them, right? And still not condone what they're doing. But my wound didn't know that because it was a child. It didn't understand that concept. So I actually had to go in and reparent it and be like, no, you can, you know, let this go and you can forgive them, and we will, you know, learn from this mistake or this experience, and we won't let that happen again, and we're not condoning that behavior by forgiving them. And then she was like, oh, okay, I think I'll go through the forgiveness process then. And I was like, okay, girl, let's do it. So sometimes it takes some reparenting. You might have like wounds or inner children that get confused about, you know, how reality is and the truth of reality and what happened. So, yeah. And then the other thing is that from age 1 to 7, that's when our root chakra is being developed. And then it goes 7 years, 7 years, 7 years for each chakra. So those first 7 years, like that's why we've got a lot of issues in our root chakras, sacral chakras, and solar plexus on this planet. I guarantee you, as you start going down through the body, it's going to get denser and denser and denser and more painful feeling once you really get into subtle energy feeling and you can feel those wounds in those areas. So yeah, the first 7 years is all the root chakra. That's your stability. That's your foundation. That's your groundedness in this reality. And when we're brought into a really scary reality, we don't want to ground here, you know, like we don't want to be in our bodies. So it can be like, again, like Becca was saying, really powerful work to do the inner child healing work, because that's like ages, that's your root chakra, you know, and that's your sacral chakra, which is like your creational sexual kind of sexual energy. Your creation energy is all flowing from there. And if that's blocked off, then you're going to have a really hard time like living your organic flow and your soul mission and all of these things. Is there something you want to
All
say?
the things that keep you
that just-
grounded.
Yeah, it just makes a lot of sense. Like every 7 years, right? So the root and then sacral and then I don't know. There's just something that clicked in me when you said it, and it just resonated a lot. But like what Melania was saying, right? With the like seeing everyone and loving them. I used to do this thing sometimes just as an experiment. It's like seeing everyone like a 7-year-old, you know. So it's like I'll talk to someone and I would just like visualize this person like he's a 7 or just 7-year-old kid, and then just have a conversation with him. And actually, what I found is through that, you can kind of see like a little bit of like their belief system, and it's very powerful because then belief system is kind of what makes a person, and you can see a lot of like their traumas and you know all these things that is carried with that belief. So yeah, it's a powerful exercise, guys, if you want to ever tap into yourself too, you know.
That's a good one.
And help see people for, you know, their truth that they are and not like get sidetracked and stuff. Yeah, that's beautiful. That's a great way to live, you know, especially when you're dealing with the difficult people.
Because like then I love that you said that, because then whenever I deal with like difficult people, I just kind of imagine like this child who's like, because one thing that I'm very grateful for is like I grew up with like a lot of people around me, and so it's like, you know, I got to see like little babies growing up to be like adults, you know. So it's like I kind of saw that growth and like how they were as a child and how they are now, and it's crazy. It's really true, like what we're saying. it is like that. And yeah, it's just powerful to be able to see it, like someone who's giving you a hard time, seeing them as a 7-year-old who maybe did not have the, you know, whatever love, or they're just looking for love, right? They're just like, hey, notice me, I'm in pain, notice me, I'm in pain, and then they're just
it's really sad, actually. It's really sad, and it is difficult work. So guys, when you do go in to do this work, I recommend, if you're going to start this work, attend tomorrow, and it's also going to be out on YouTube, so you can watch it anytime. You don't need to be live. So you really understand the process, because like King's saying, it's like there's some things that are important, right? Like we have to be the parent, we have to stay in love, we can't get consumed by that emotion again, and you know, join the party of that, you know, horrible frequency, because then you're not healing it properly. You're not going to be able to heal it. So there are specific things that we haven't mentioned today that are good to do. But I wanted to just like end today's podcast with, we're just going to close our eyes just for 1 minute. And I just want you to see and bring up your inner child and feel where your inner child might be in your body right now. Is there any like points that are really blaring at you, like, hey, I'm over here? Just kind of move, usually into the belly area. And see if you can feel your inner child or see any imagery of how it's doing, how it's feeling. And once you can kind of feel it or see something, I just want to take 1 minute here to just really feel it, as well as soak it in love. From you now, okay? You're this mature, beautiful soul now, and you can come into your body and love these hurting parts. So whether you want to give it a hug for today, just give it a big hug. I love you. I'm so sorry that I haven't been here with you yet. I love you so much. And you guys can open your eyes. Just wanted to take us through a quick journey. So that's how easily we can start tapping into the inner child and just going, whether to give it love or if you have a longer period where you can really spend some time with it to like start speaking and investigating like we were talking about. And then going through the release cycle and bringing it into a new beautiful space. You need a bit more time for that. But if you want to just check in with your body or inner child ever and just give it a big hug, like it loves that. And it's going to build that relationship. Because like we were saying at first, sometimes your inner child can be a little like shut down, shut off, not feeling safe with you because we have been avoiding it for so long sometimes, right? And it can feel really hurt by that. And really distraught. So you got to build that relationship. So it's good to, check in with the inner child when you can and just give it a big hug. How are you doing today? I love you. I'm here for you. Let me know if you need anything. And yeah, excited for tomorrow. Excited to take you guys through the like deep process of how to do it. Because like Melania was saying, like, inner child or inner self, the healing work of how to heal your inner child is also going to translate over to how to heal your teenage traumas, how to heal your adult traumas. It's going to work in all these different realms, even going into how to heal past life traumas, how to heal like your full timeline as a soul, as well as a human being in this life. So it's really, really cool. And it is like, I'm going to bring this up in this podcast. I didn't know if I was going to for sure. I love inner child healing because it's like I call it time travel healing for me. Because you're like traveling back to this space and time that's in the past, right? And there's a lot of heavy emotion in this time and on the timeline. You can actually travel back there. And this is my own personal belief with how I understand space and time. But that moment is actually happening right now too. So when we go and we actually change that moment in your timeline to a more beautiful, loving experience. And it changes literally your whole life. You wouldn't remember it this way, but your whole life after that up into this moment as well, and changes you in the present.
I believe that too.
So that's my belief. I call it time traveling healing work, and it just makes it sound cooler for people. So yeah, I love you guys so much. Any last thoughts here?
My last word is when you're doing the healing work, instead of judging, just be curious.
That's a good one.
Just try it out. It's worth it.
Beautiful. Yeah, this is going to help you guys cultivate so much love in your life. We love you, and yeah, we're here for you. We'll see you tomorrow.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye.